Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another year of Rocky Mountain Ham University. This is our first meeting this week, and we're kicking off with a tech talk instead of an RMHAM University because we got bumped by the Rocky Mountain Convention up in Cheyenne a couple of weeks ago. So very pleased that Dr. Raman Sinha is going to be our presenter this evening and is going to talk about the incident command system for events. I'm also obliged to remind you that Rocky Mountain Ham Radio is a 501c3. And as you're approaching the end of the year and looking at ways to reduce your tax burden, we would be more than happy to help. In that particular situation, and Wayne N0POH is happy to talk to you about all of the exciting ways you can reduce your tax burden. So without further ado, Raman, take it away.
All right. Good evening, everybody. As Dr. Schroeder said, hi, I'm Raman Sinha, amateur radio call sign KV0N. Today we'll be talking about using the incident command system for events. If you don't know what ICS is, then don't worry, we'll be talking about that too. We have a lot to go through, so please save your questions till the end. You'll find out I talk so much, I might just answer your questions as we go. And the slides are available after the talk, so don't worry about taking notes. So tonight, more specifically, we'll talk about challenges that some of my clubs and its member volunteers may have faced before and during participation in an event where we offered communications assistance. We'll also talk about the importance of written documentation in helping overcome some of those challenges. We'll talk about what is the incident command system, or ICS for short. We'll talk about forms that are used in ICS, scope to those that we would use in a typical event like a parade or athletic event. We'll also talk about an event that I helped where we used ICS. We'll talk about dead trees versus packet radio, ICS forms in WinLink Express or RMS Express, and I'll show you a demo of filling out an ICS form using WinLink. So let's get into it. But first, who am I? I became licensed during COVID in early August 2020. And over 3 months, I earned my amateur extra. Of course, that's no code, but I'm actively learning CW. I'm a member of the Longmont Amateur Radio Club, the Indian Peaks Radio Club in Nederland, Colorado, Boulder County Aries. I'm trying to get into Rocky Mountain Ham Radio, but they just won't let me. It's true, I'm a retired podiatric surgeon. These days, I'm the director of engineering at GLUE in downtown Boulder. Some of my favorite things are making and experimenting with antennas where I like to use electrons. I'm generally involved in creating media with my ham clubs, including YouTube videos, web stuff, and photography. And like all good software engineers, I have various side projects where I'm writing software for ham radio. I like pictures. This picture on the left is a super antenna on a tram CB mag mount on top of my Subaru. It works great. On the right, upper right is the RTL SDR, and the lower right is a 49-to-1 for an end-fed half wave. So I've never coordinated an event from a ham radio club's perspective, but it does seem like it takes a lot of time. So these are my experiences from a volunteer standpoint. Some of the events I volunteered at to assist with ham radio communications include a local parade, and then the same parade, but coordinated by a different member of our club. So similar experience, so very different experiences from two different coordinators. A running event, I think it was like a 10K with some shorter distances as well. A bike race, a simulated emergency test or set with my local Aries group, a whitewater race, and a few others. So most every time when it got near an event, it would be announced on the net, and a call for volunteers by the ham radio coordinator at our club would go out. And he'd say, This is a great event for new hams that want to participate in your first event. And then there would be the emails. What day is it again? What time? Where? What does the course look like? I thought it was on Sunday. It's been on Sunday for 20 years. Are you sure? Do I need an off-road vehicle to get to my station? Will my HT do, or do I need a mobile rig and an external battery and antenna? I'm a new ham and I got a 100-watt Baofeng UV 100 HT with a telescopic antenna. I can't wait to try it out. Why don't we just use the club's 70 centimeter repeater? I get a great signal downtown. Hey, my friend that's not in a ham radio club wants to help. Can you reply with the date and time again? We can't get Joe's crossband repeaters, so we'll just use 147.45 and 146580 as the simplex as backup. What's the PL tone? 14350? Wait, I thought it was 88.5. Do you have last year's map? I didn't get your drawing as an attachment. Can you resend it? What's .bmp? I have a Mac. So you get the deal. Hundreds of emails, thousands of questions, everyone replying all. New people need the info again. Mass confusion. New hams have volunteered, are scared out of their minds and want to back out. So all the events that I volunteered for were mostly successful, and the radio club was always thanked for our support. Afterwards, we always discuss what went well and what we can do better when we help out next year. So I personally always reflect on how I could personally improve my volunteering with respect to preparation, radio gear that I brought with me, and my performance of the main job at hand, communications. So some of the more common issues that I've heard raised afterwards were the frequencies changed last minute, or we had less operators than we thought and couldn't man all the stations. There was confusion around where someone's station was. There was confusion around where to go after the runners or floats passed my station. We should have accounted for the athletes that were just out riding their bikes because of that, we had to stay longer to make sure that all entrants were actually accounted for. We couldn't tell the race organizer what time we notified them of an emergency. I was told that I was supposed to be at my station at 7 a.m. when I volunteered, and then it turned to 6 a.m. and then 5 a.m. No one told me we were using a crossband repeater. I didn't program that frequency in my radio and wasn't prepared to do it in the field when we started having issues at my location. The map we were given when we got to the parking area was confusing to look at. It would be nice to know where to park. I'm not familiar with the streets. It would have been good to have a map of all the locations beforehand so that I can offer to help when everyone passed my station. I couldn't give the race organizer info about other stations because cell service doesn't work up here and I couldn't find the email. I can't remember names or call signs of other operators. It was impossible to know locations because we used cross streets and not tactical names for locations. This is my first time working this event. It would have been good if I knew X, Y, or Z beforehand. I parked further away than I needed to. I had to leave my station early because I thought we were done at 2 p.m. like someone said in the email thread. It would have been better to know how we did it last year with the previous coordinator instead of going in blind this year. Joe did it his way because he's been doing this event for 20 years, which confused everyone else. Everyone should do it the same way, no matter their skill level with the radio. I didn't program the repeaters using our tactical name for it, so I didn't know it was just a backup club's repeater. So you can guess the same thing will happen next year. And when the club's asked to help out in a new event, they'll have to start from square one with the event organizer and the local municipality with regards to names, credentials, et cetera, et cetera. These pictures here, the one on the left, it's me sitting in the van with Mark N7CTM volunteering at an event. The one on the upper right is me really happy because we have some documentation. And on the lower right is just a photo of it with another club. So what if there was a way to make the event coordination and participation process smoother for amateur radio clubs? What if we use written documentation? We could document everything from year to year. Then we would have the previous year's information to help start the coordination process for this year. Newbies can use their previous year's docs to help them prepare for volunteering. The club could provide the municipality updated documentation when asked. The club could provide a new event organizers, give them previous year's documentation. There'd be a smoother handoff to subsequent coordinators when they rotate out and in that club position. Our previous year's improvements wouldn't be lost because we'd work off a better and better process each year. We'd have insight for a new event from documentation from a previous similar event. All volunteers would know better what's expected of each other instead of seemingly winging it. Each volunteer can print out the document and have a hard copy on site at the event with us. We can print extra copies to give to the event organizer to make reference at the event. Any changes can be made in a new document with all current information would be in that one document, reducing on-site confusion. Everyone involved could critique and improve the document, maps, etc. And all this would be saved instead of a giant email thread that would be difficult to manage. All right, so Wikipedia says standardization can help maximize compatibility, interoperability, safety, repeatability, or quality. It can also facilitate a normalization of formerly custom processes. Why do we all use Anderson power poles? Why hopefully all our power poles read right tongue up? At least that's how I remember it. Does anyone remember filling out Scantron forms, the little A through F dots? What about when you took your licensing exam with pencil and paper? Those are standard tests. They're easy to fill out, easy to grade. What about the documentation I discussed previously? I bet some of you thought about having some sort of ham radio event template to put in Google Docs and share it with the ham radio community. This way it's easier to volunteer for multiple clubs and multiple events because you as a volunteer will know beforehand what and where the information will be. So because of standards, you have an advantage of knowing something ahead of time, like where everyone can call and monitor while on the outdoors on VHF, like 14652 for 5 minutes at the top of every hour, for example. Sure, some standards are more standard than others, but I think we can all agree that standards can be a good thing, especially when you need to know where to find information quickly. So let's look at how we can use a standard to help with event coordination and operation. So the Incident Command System, or ICS, was developed in the 70s following some catastrophic fires in California, where they looked at case histories to determine the causes and responses of disasters. The Incident Command System has been battle tested for over 40 years by all levels of government, non-government, and the private sector. The ICS is a standard approach to incident management that's used by all kinds, for all kinds of incidents by all types of organizations. It's applicable to small, large, and complex incidents. It can be used for emergencies as well as planned events, including simple events like a local county parade. It enables coordinated responses between government jurisdictions and agencies, or race organizers, ham radio operators, that's you, and emergency medical services. It establishes a common process for incident level planning and resource management. It also allows for integration of resources such as facilities, equipment, personnel within a common organizational structure. So ICS is a component of a larger framework called the National Incident Management System, which we won't get into here, but NIMS was established sometime after the September 11th attacks. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has free courses online to help better understand ICS as well as NIMS. In terms of standardization, ICS establishes a common terminology that allows many organizations to work together. The documents should contain no jargon, no 10 codes like CB and the like. And obviously for ham radio communications, we can expect the documentation to be to have some specialization towards radio operators. So let's go over some of the features specific to a ham radio event that you would volunteer for. If you've taken even the most basic ICS course, then you'll know that I'm leaving out most of the boring stuff. That starts to matter more if you're a member of an Aries group that's serving the local government. So an incident action plan, or IAP for short, it covers a specific time frame. It assigns responsibilities. It specifies communication protocols, and it ensures that achievement of incident objectives are met. In other words, the IAP outlines what do we want to do, who's responsible for doing it, and how do we communicate with each other, among other things. So one of the main things that ICS defines is the hierarchy of who's in charge of what and who does what. So parties often involved that you might come across include the ham radio communications coordinator, volunteer licensed ham radio operators, such as yourself, ambulance services, EMTs, the event coordinator, and public participants like athletes. So there are many forms that support the incident action plan. ICS Form 201 is the incident briefing form that can be used for an overview of, say, an athletic event. It might include maps of the course, how ham radios will serve, maybe other generalizations. There's other forms that will say who and how many hams we need to be on the course, as well as which group we're working on, we're working in tandem with. For example, are we there to report issues to the race organizer only, or are we there, or are we in a mountainous area without cell phone coverage so that we can relay messages to dispatch EMS, for example? The 201, which you see here, is the completed form that sets the stage for what and how your club is going to help. It's also the form you'd give someone if they ask for more details before they wanted to volunteer. So it's the first form that's usually generated. Then there's other supporting forms that basically have specific details that support Form 201. A favorite hams is Form 205, the Incident Radio Communications Plan. Let's go over some of them now in more detail. So here's a sample list of ICS forms. There's a lot of forms, but there are some ICS forms that could be most useful for an event that involves ham radio operators, providing communications for non-emergencies, as well as emergency situations in an event. The ICS 201 is an incident briefing. This is the overall gist of the plan, which we saw earlier, and we'll go into more detail later on. ICS 202 is incident objectives, specifics on the incident plan. 204 is the assignment list. Who's coming to play ham radio? 205 is the incident communications radio plans. This is the forms us hams are interested in, usually. 205A, the communications list, which is usually phone numbers of everybody or how to contact them outside of radio a lot of the time. 206 is the medical plan. What happens when someone gets hurt? Phone numbers for EMS, etc. 213 is a general message. Pretty much anything can be sent on that form. 214 is an activity log, and this is pretty important. So there's a timeline of when an athlete got hurt and when communications happened. It might be requested for liability and insurance purposes. It's encouraged to adapt forms to meet your specific event's needs. The form should indicate clearly that it's been altered to meet a specific need. It's also okay to have attachments and appendices. All the forms can and should travel together as a complete packet, otherwise known as the Incident Action Plan, or IAP. If you need to modify information, then it's best to send out the whole packet of forms as a PDF, for example, to ensure everyone has the most up-to-date info, and print them off again if you want to. The forms online are in PDF format, and most computers are able to fill them out online and save them locally. There's also Excel and other versions of ICS forms, which make them easier to fill out, as well as duplicate and modify in subsequent years or events. And these are all standardized FEMA forms that everyone can get for free. So enough theory. Last year, long before I took the ICS courses required to join BCARES, my local Aries group, before I'd ever seen an ICS form, I was asked to participate in a whitewater race with Rocky Mountain Ham, helping provide communications. They needed an operator to help with a backup communications van. After I agreed to participate, I immediately got this attachment in an email. I opened it and my jaw dropped. I asked myself, what did I get myself into? So I printed out the PDF and flipped through the pages. There was so much detailed information. Forms were filled out with people's names, phone numbers, there were frequencies, there were maps, there was even diagrams of signals that you can give to boaters and emergency responders if they couldn't hear you across from or in a raging river. So after my initial anxiety, and sometime before I pressed the send button on the "actually I can't make it" email I composed to Dr. William Schroeder, my type A brain thought, wait, this is brilliant. I didn't have to send and receive a ton of emails to get all the information I needed. I had it all right there printed out. Where to drive to, where to park, phone numbers and frequencies, new names and call signs. All I had to do was bring the IAP with me and try not to drop it in the raging whitewater. Afterwards, we did have a few changes and a few updates to the packet of ICS forms, and they were faithfully updated and resent to the volunteer group. I was thankful everything was hyper standardized because I now knew what I was looking at and didn't have a panic attack when a new email from the event group with an attachment was received. So the night before the event, I programmed my radio into my radio, all the frequencies and tactical names shown on the ICS 205, including the contingent frequencies. And this made me more confident that I wouldn't have to reprogram my radio in the field. So in all, I was much more confident because all the information was right there at my fingertips and not requiring electricity or internet access, which we didn't have at the race. So let's review the ICS IAP now. I don't see anybody dozing off, so hopefully I'm talking fast enough. If I need to slow down, let me know. I'm from the East Coast, I talk really fast. All right, so we'll have sheets on the left and on the right. So on the left is the cover sheet and ICS 201, the incident briefing. Provides some overall information. Some of the questions that it answers is, when does the event start? It contains a map of important locations for the Gore race and an overall summary of what the incident is, a kayak and raft race going through the hardest rapids with radio operators providing safety comms. It also identifies who prepared this and what their position is. In this case, it's Willem, and he's the comms leader, COML. Remember when I said that different people in an ICS organization have different roles? Each form is important to someone in the hierarchy. This form would be important to the main guy running the incident. So after a period of time, the incident may be handed off to someone else who would need this info too, if this was a long-running event. All right, so these are additional pages of an ICS 201 with some additional information, including planned times of important events during the race, as well as an org chart outlining who's responsible for what. So on the 201 on the left, we see, Friday at 9:30, the night before, there's a briefing and a safety meeting at the pump house. At 0800, at the tactical locations, tunnel and toilet bowl, the team departs the pump house. At 8:30, at the Gore Scissors Rapid, and start departing Kremlin. At 11 o'clock, all teams should be at their assigned locations. The race starts at noon, and the race ends around 1500 or 3 o'clock. On the right-hand side, it shows, the names and the call signs. I know it's probably really hard to read on the screen, but you'll be able to download the slides and probably see them a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, it basically shows who's in charge of what. Incident commander, we have a safety person, we have a communications leader, and who's at what tactical station. Start, Gore/Scissors Rapid, tunnel, my favorite, the toilet bowl, finish, and the takeout. These are all tactical locations on the first page of the map. So you don't have to worry about, we're not worried about street names. Obviously there's no streets here, but next to this mountain, next to this thing or whatever. It spells it out really clearly. This is additional information, additional detail for the 201 regarding the comms plan. So this is super in-depth. It basically lays out how we're going to communicate, emergency comms, and some other things, which you can read in great detail if you download the slides. So these are more details specific to locations, as well as the ICS 202. The incident objectives, or ICS 202 form, describes the incident objectives, command emphasis on priorities, and safety considerations for the next operational period. There was only one operational period in our event, but if you're using this to respond to some sort of accident, or if you're you're a first responder or something like that, then there could be many operational periods. The ICS 202 is generally the first page of the IAP that's given to all supervisory personnel. So we can look here on the left. Oops. We can look here on the left. It has locate in the Gore Canyon, Latin Long, and what class the rapids are, of each tactical named location. In our case, it was easy to name it according to the names of the rapids, because this is what the race organizers use. So, we were using some common language here. And then on the 202, it outlines, what are our objectives? Why are we here? We're here to provide communications in support of safety teams, provide situational awareness to safety teams, and we're here to assist race organizers in conducting a safe event. And that's it. We don't have any more responsibilities. And moreover, this, this is telling us we don't have the authority to do anything. Like we're just ham radio operators. We're helping out. We don't get more authority. This is what we're here to do, is basically support the general safety. And then this sheet also shows you what else is going to be attached to it at the bottom in check marks. So you can see, I don't have ICS 203. Oh, according to this, I'm not supposed to get an ICS 203 with this. All right. So here we see the ICS 204, the assignments list. And our favorite, the ICS 205. So the ICS 205 provides information on all radio frequencies or trunked radio system talk group assignments for each operational period. So on the left-hand side, we see the 204. It defines the resources, and some of this was defined on the some of the hierarchy stuff earlier, and just basically more information on the right-hand side, which is the one that we really care about as ham radio operators. These are the frequencies and names of the frequencies that we're going to use, the tactical names. Let's see, what else did I want to show you about this? There's probably like 7 lines down. There's a frequency for Union Pacific Railroad. Why? One of the things you really need to know if you're going to volunteer is there is a live railroad. You might have to deal with a moving train. And we did have to deal with moving trains. So that made it really fun. You have to pay attention. All right, the 205A provides additional details. So I've whited out personal stuff you don't need to know. But we're ham radio operators. We know how to find people by their call sign. So if you really need to find out that information, I'm sure you can. But these are phone numbers of people that are helping out. And on the right-hand side, the medical plan, it's, how do we get a hold of Grand County EMS, the BLM field office, the sheriff, and EMS. Believe it or not every place has 911, access for emergency management. So the other thing I want to call out is, so the 206, the medical plan provides information on incident medical aid stations, transportation services, hospitals, medical emergency procedures, primarily for incident response resources. Notice that these forms imply that there is somebody solely responsible for safety. So if we flip back a few pages, there is a safety officer, somebody whose job it is to just oversee safety over the whole thing. On the left, here we have a blank ICS 206, the medical plan, and the ICS 208. The safety message plan, the ICS 208, expands on the safety message and site safety plan. It's an optional form that may be included and completed by the safety officer with additional information. So notice how it includes information about a railroad track and falling in the water. I'm reading this a few days before. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what did I get myself into? But yeah, it just gives more information on how to deal with trains and keep an eye out for trains. And if you fall in the water, here's what to do. And by the way, please don't go in the water and wear PFD. And this was, a few years ago, COVID-19 was raging. So they had some information on that as well. And here's another attachment from the Grand County Public Health Department about COVID-19. And then my favorite attachment, kayaking and river signals. This is what caused me the most panic when I first agreed to volunteer and got this ICS form. I was like, hold on a minute. I need to learn like kayaking signals. I'm going to be in the water. Like what's happening? Why did I volunteer? All right. So what do you think about this IAP? It's impressive, isn't it? I say it's pretty complete. After the event, we did talk about improvements, and you can bet those will make their way into the documentation to make next year's event even better. What do you think the race organizer thinks of the ham radio club that helped? We're prepared to communicate emergencies, huh? What do you think a returning volunteer next year that gets an updated IAP? They're going to say, easy peasy. I know what I'm looking at. I know how to read this. I know what's happening. What do you think about a newly minted technician that receives this IAP? Panic attack. What do you think the local police, ambulance service, and municipality that receives this IAP would think? Hey, we can read and understand this. We know ICS. What else do I want to tell you about this slide? Not a whole lot, except, let's see. Yeah, so I mean, just going back, the race organizer, this document is impressive. You guys are professional amateur radio operators. Recruiting volunteer, a volunteer that was recruited. At first I had a panic attack, then I realized all the information is there at my fingertips. My XYL looked at the operational period and says, I can volunteer, because she wants to know when am I going to leave the house and when should I be back? Net control, they would say everyone knew what to do because we had all the information at our fingertips when we needed it. Great job, team. The Hotwash, which is sort of like an after action report. The COML. The event ran successfully and we were able to manage emergencies quickly and effectively, but there's a few tweaks that we're going to make next year. Race organizer. Later on, hey, remember me from last year? Your club helped us helped us run a great race. Can you come back again this year? We have swag and t-shirts. All right, so just take a breather. So information isn't static, right? During the course of the event, you may need to pass traffic. In our case, the stations on course passed bib numbers. As net control, we wrote down the time of nearly every piece of traffic on an ICS 214, the activity log. We received a lot of information. Voice may be okay, but sometimes it's easier and more reliable to just pass it via packet radio or internet if you're lucky enough to have it at your site. Or sometimes you can have a local wireless IP network too, which enables telnet on WinLink. Of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have internet due to the topography of the canyon we were in. In addition, if you're passing a lot of traffic, it may not be feasible to tie up the net with lots of traffic. So examples of a lot of traffic would be rosters of people at your shelter, start time and the bib numbers of the athletes that have started or passed your station, detailed instructions or directions. Sure, if you have enough operators, you can switch to a secondary net or perhaps a simplex frequency to pass long and large amounts of traffic. But there is a better way. How do you do this? With a radio and a laptop. Depending on the type of radio you have, you'll probably need a TNC device like a SignalLink. If you have a newer ICOM, then you can plug your radio right into your computer via USB because there's a built-in sound card probably. If you played with FT8 or FLDigi before, then your station probably already meets the requirements to send and receive ICS forms over the air. If you use FLDigi or WSJTX, you'll know that there's many modes available to you. It's the same with packet radio. You can use free but slow protocols, or you can use fast protocols that require expensive proprietary hardware. There is a middle ground, and it's called VARA. There's VARA for HF and VARA for FM, which are relatively new protocols implemented in software. The cost is pretty minimal, but the speed, reliability, and functionality are incredible, as long as all stations, including relay stations, are using VARA software. So VARA software doesn't require specialized computer hardware, and it's been reported to run on the $60 Windows 10 laptops that are all the rage in ham radio right now, if you can get your hands on one. Micro Center only allows you to buy 5 of them at a time. But anyway, so let's look at how you can use your computer or radio and some software to send ICS forms. And this photo here is a recent electron abuse that I did. I wanted to wind a 49-to-1 UNUN to do some testing, but I just used math and square roots that Willem might like to figure out different different transformation ratios. So, the classic is 49:1, or sometimes people will wind to 64:1. I just wanted to see what would happen at other ratios. All right, so ICS forms are so prevalent in Aries use that they're built right into WinLink Express, which I'll refer to as WinLink for the rest of this talk. The WinLink I'm talking about is the renamed RMS Express on Windows. If you can remember, if you've been using it for a while. There's other implementations of WinLink that I'm not as familiar with. So in addition to WinLink, there's several common ICS forms can be passed using FLDigi and FLMessage. When they're used in this way, it's sometimes called NBEMS, or Narrowband Emergency Messaging Software. There's a good list on the WinLink site that is referenced at the end of the slide deck that contains other WinLink clients. PAT is a cross-platform one that runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac. WOAD, W-O-A-D, WinLink on Android, runs on Android, and it's looking promising as well. Beware, there's lots of other features built into WinLink, including the ability to get weather reports, news, and other bulletin. So it's a fun way to play ham radio, even if you have no one to talk to. Some people have also made turn-based games that you play over WinLink, including one called Hamword, which is like Wordle over packet radio. So let's look at how to fill out and send some sample ICS forms using WinLink for Windows. All right, let's see here. Okay, yeah, WinLink and ICS forms. So assuming you have WinLink installed, here's what it looks like after you've used it a little. If you use the email client in the 90s, like Eudora or Outlook, this should look very familiar to you. WinLink is a general email client, but has many more features. You can send queries via email to receive text-based responses. This is me reading the BBC headlines using a web-to-text service. So what I've done is I've sent a query to the WinLink system, and they've basically converted bbc.com/news to text, and they've replied to me in a few minutes later. And I can read the news headlines if I care, but I don't. Setup menu is found here. There's tons of settings depending on what features you want to use and how advanced you want to get. So here we see WinLink Express setup. Other cool thing is GPS/position reports down below a little bit. And a few others that, we'll get into some choice others. So here's the main setup screens where you put in your call sign, your WinLink password, and other information. It's important to keep the app and forms updated for best performance. Notice I'm about to hit the update button in blue. Here. Let's see, what else can I tell you about this one? Not a whole lot, except now you can send me money to my PO box in Boulder. So to compose a message, just go up to message, click on new message as you would think. And then here I am, a new message screen shows up. Here I'm sending an email to myself. If anybody wants to and you have WinLink set up, send me a message, Kilo Victor Zero November. Notice I have the select template menu item in blue hovered over with my mouse. So I clicked that. There are tons of forms that can be filled out in WinLink. You can add your own. I've expanded the ICS USA forms. If you notice the numbers, these should start looking familiar to you. The 203, the 205, all these, a bunch of ones that I talked about. So this is the general forms section. I'll select WinLink check-in. This one's good for checking into WinLink nets. What happens when you do that is a web browser opens up with some pre-populated info. If I had filled this out previously, I could have hit the load checked in data button, and it would populate even more stuff from last time. This way I could just update what I wanted. And here I am sending AC0KQ a note saying I'm at the repeater site. Once I'm done, I hit submit. It's also filled in a few other cool things. You know, I'm able to, if your computer has a GPS and it's set up to, you know, work with WinLink, it'll put the lat and long. It'll put your grid square. I don't know what this, I think this is probably a message ID. And then, you know, you can fill out basically other stuff. And we'll hit submit. And basically, so this was Firefox that had opened up. And now it says to complete your submission, just hit the OK button and close this screen. So here's my message to Willem. Notice how it's attached as a small text file. It's not a giant PDF. It's also attached as a tab delimited format and sets the subject as part of my message. This is all to make it send the least amount of traffic, the least amount of data over the wire. There's also an option to send a PDF if you're sending it to a regular email address, which implies the person wouldn't load it via WinLink and see a nice form. But when Willem gets this and he opens it, he's going to see the form view like this, all nicely filled out. And then to put it in the send queue, click post to outbox. That's what's set up, and that's what's in blue right now. And then here's the message sitting in the outbox. It's ready for me to turn on my radio and hit send. I'll be sending via Telnet since I was connected to the internet, which is what we'll show here in a second. But before we get to that, there's a WinLink query catalog. It's a bunch of information you can get back if you send a very small email to the WinLink system. Here I am asking for wave heights in the Great Lakes. There's tons of other stuff. So there's weather, Great Lakes, besides weather, which this screenshot is, there's, you know, a lot of other stuff like the news and things like that. So you'll notice in the right window, I've added 2 queries, wave heights and a photograph of something. I can select as many as I want, and I can click post request. I could also, this list of stuff you can request, you can update via internet or update via your ham radio. And then check the menu to start a Telnet WinLink session and hit open session. And here's the view of the outbox and the Telnet session going. So I've got these 2, and it says Telnet WinLink session. And if you really want to, you know, read it, it's sending an inquiry about 2 NOAA things. And here's the sent box showing what I've sent. So sent items, those are the 2, those are the things that I've sent recently. So after waiting a few minutes, I check WinLink again, and here are my 2 queries that came back. Let's see here. Well, here, let's go back to this one. So this query was, what was it, wave heights or something like that? Wave height forecast for Canadian portion of the Great Lakes. This may not be obvious to you, but WinLink is used by people on like sailboats in the middle of the ocean. You only need a ham radio and a PC and WinLink, and you can get all of this information, you know, without any internet access. Now, Elon Musk has something to say about that, but you know, we'll pretend that that doesn't exist right now for you, especially since the antennas are giant for now. But anyway, you can totally do this without any sort of internet connection because it's it's coming over HF. In my example, it came over Telnet. So this query contains an image file. Whoop, back. Yeah, so this is telling me it's contained as an image file. And here's the image I requested. I'm getting an image over WinLink. This could be an image. It can be a picture of your daughter while you're in the middle of the ocean and you're missing your XYL and family, you know, whatever. It's kind of crazy and cool what you can send. If anyone can read this image, let me know, because I have no idea what any of these things mean. Looks like cold water and warm water, but they're probably wave heights. You can also do things like create an ICS 309 comms report. I'm sure it's important to somebody, but it's another ICS report. Here it is. It's a PDF file that shows communication stuff that happened, at least at my station. You can also play games via WinLink, like Wordle for your ham radio when you're bored. I haven't played it. I know there's other games out there too, but you have to be pretty lonely, I guess, to play games over WinLink. Wave Talkers on YouTube has a ton of WinLink training videos, so I would check them out. These guys are funny. Yeah, I love watching their videos. Let's see. All right. Wow, I talked really fast. That was a lot of material. In summary, treat every event as an incident, create an incident action plan, and use ICS forms where possible. Disseminate documentation to all parties involved, including event organizers, municipalities, volunteers. Consider using packet radio for longer events or events that need to pass a lot of traffic, or events spread out over a large area and not amenable to FM repeater. Using ICS, you can help ham radio clubs gain more volunteers more quickly and more volunteers more quickly for events. You, the ham radio event coordinator, can run an event more efficiently with greater satisfaction because the IAP will force you to think and plan ahead. This will increase confidence of everyone that's involved. If you're taking over ham radio communications for an event that has an IAP, you're far ahead if you started without them. Distributing the IAP can also help volunteers be more prepared to help with an event. And clubs using ICS for events can help local areas organizations recruit new members, since they're already now familiar with the main framework used to deal with disasters and other types of events. There is one more thing. If this talk isn't enough to convince you to use ICS for your next event, consider that emergency communications is going to be one of the new pillars for ARRL. I talked to the ARRL president at the last meeting in Cheyenne, and they really, it's been in QST and some other things that ARRL kind of really wants to, play the MCOM role, because if you read some of the legal mumbo jumbo in the government and stuff like that, amateur radio is a service. They don't consider us a hobby. They're like, hey, we're giving you this radio spectrum because you're useful to us in some way or another. Let's see. Here's some references and links to check out. This is a 5-to-1 UNUN that I made a few months ago. It worked really well. Yeah, so let's see. These are basically references and link. There's my website, there's some FEMA websites, NBMS, and various radio clubs and stuff like that. That's all I got. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Well, I would just like to point out that, some of these ham radio events that we have, and a good example of that is the Dirty 30, actually rise to the level of type 2 events. We didn't really cover that in this presentation, but basically in the ICS system, type 1s are, the top tier federal response kind of teams. Type 2 is a little less capable, and then type 3 is the most common one. And for some of these really complicated events, such as the Dirty 30, which is an event we hold up well, maybe we'll hold it again in Golden Gate State Park, the level of complexity, considering all of the things that's going on, all of the people are involved and so forth, it actually raises to the what is called type 2, which is generally called a statewide response. If you use the simple analogy of type 1 being federal, type 2 being state, and type 3 being county level. So especially for those larger events, something like ICS is absolutely a game changer, because it's the only way, as Raman explained in such eloquent fashion, that that we can have everybody on the same page. So thank you again for a very entertaining and very insightful presentation, Raman.
Great. Yeah, you're welcome. It was a lot of fun. Any other questions?
Are we going to post this to the RMHAM site right away?
It already is.
Great. I'm going to share it with some folks who are kind of reorganizing a unit here in Wyoming. Thank you.
Excellent presentation. We're type 3. Rocky Mountain Ham Radio has an IAP for the Swap Fest every February. It's about 4 pages, outlines people, what they do, what they're supposed to do, 205 and a map. And that's the Ham Fest. Have fun.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. You know, one of the things that I didn't really mention is some of the events that I've helped out at. We haven't used ICS forms or any sort of prior planning. And, you know, while it did go okay, you know, definitely would have, having any sort of planning beforehand would have helped. And, you know, I'm on a crusade to basically get everyone to use ICS. Just so it can force the people to think a little bit before they ask for volunteers, and then we show up and, you know, we just look like a bunch of buffoons that just want to play ham radio. You know, I think it's great when we show up and we're, you know, with our equipment, we're very professional, amateur about our amateur radio hobby, no pun intended. You know, I think we look a lot better, and you know, other people hear about us and they say, hey, we heard you helped out this event. Can you help us? You know, which is the greatest compliment. So, and
if you don't mind, I'd like to make a couple comments too, Raman.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We here down in R5D2 use this all of the time. I started using it in about maybe 2014, maybe even sooner than that. But I agree. It's very helpful, and it's definitely helpful to our emergency managers, our law enforcement, CSP, everything that's involved in any kind of bike race, any kind of on-road event. If they're going to be involved, they know how to read this, and they have used it because of us. So thank you. Thank you for bringing this on. And I think a lot of people have found a lot of value in it.
yeah, great. You're welcome. Yeah, one of the things that our Aries membership coordinator complains about is, you know, people have to take the ICS, what is it, the 200, the 300 and the 700. And that's sometimes it's a blocker for people joining our local Aries group, because, you know, they think it's hard or difficult or whatever. But, you know, if you're using these forms, you know, before even joining or thinking about joining your Aries group, and you know, you get used to and practice using these forms, then those courses are cake, you know, as a prereq to join your Aries group.
It certainly is, but you know, some of those courses don't actually teach you how to fill out these forms. So
right,
that's another blocker, right?
For sure, yeah. And you can, I mean, I've Googled, you know, ICS forms, and you know, there's a great one. It's called the NIMS ICS Forms Booklet, version 3 PDF. And it, you know, it goes through the forms, and it kind of goes through kind of how to fill out some of the forms. But I think, you know, practice makes perfect. You know, if you see how these forms are filled out by people that know how to do it because you've been volunteering at some events where they are using it, then you kind of have an idea of, oh, this is what goes here, this goes here, this goes here. I have some really good examples. So yeah, for sure. Somebody had a question, is the IS 201 and IS 300 planning P concepts? Well, yeah, I didn't go into the planning P thing, but that was kind of out of scope of this talk. But let's see here, I can look up. The ICS 201 is an incident briefing, and the IS 300. Where is the ICS 300? I don't see that on the list of this form.
This is Randy. I'm the one that sent you that message. What it is, it's the IS 201 is the online course at EMI that talks about ICS forms and
Oh,
the
well.
development of the incident action plan. And the I-300 course is now a 2.5-day course that goes in great detail on how to use the IAP incident forms, including the 215, to work along the side of the planning P in developing your incident action plans.
Yeah, and one thing that's really important to know is I think for the most part, all these trainings, yeah, somebody posted in the chat, all these trainings are free. You know, to do online and get a certificate of completion, you know, and what have you. So, you know, to me, they're kind of fun because they present like local disasters and other stuff. And I mean, it's sad to think about, but it's fun to, you know, think about and gain a greater appreciation for, you know, how the police, how county, ambulance, you know, how everyone sort of works together in our local government, you know, to assist in disasters. And, you know, we all live in Colorado. Natural disasters happen. We've had fires, fires very recently here in Boulder County last Christmas or, you know, New Year's Eve, where we had to evacuate, and, you know, other natural disasters, including fires. So after, you know, going through some of this stuff before I joined my local Aries group, you know, just gave me a lot more appreciation for what the men and women in our local government do, how much training they have to get, and all this other stuff in order to serve us. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
And I would definitely encourage you, if you have an opportunity to attend one of those IS 300 or IS 400 courses, it is more fun than a barrel of monkeys. They basically, you know, it's usually a 2-day during the week, right? Because it's more for professionals. So you may have to take some time off of work, but it is very insightful to see how some of these other agencies function. And like I said, it is a great deal of fun.
Cool.
Any last questions before we wrap it up? Well, thank you very much, Raman. It was a great pleasure to have you here, and I appreciate all the effort that you put into putting this all together for us. A reminder that our next RMHAM University is on November the 12th, where Mike K0NGA is going to talk about DMR programming. And again, it will be one of those practical applications where if you bring your radio, we'll have you know, the program, and bring your laptop and the programming cable. We'll actually walk through what it takes to actually program the radio, add new channels, figure out the order in which you need to do things in order to make a DMR radio work. Of course, the next one after that then will be Bob Woody, which is going to talk about test equipment and with an emphasis on oscilloscopes and vector network analyzers, or VNAs. And then, of course, next year, there's a series of more talks. James is going to talk about 3D printing and things like that. So looking forward to an exciting sequence here. And thank you again, Raman, for kicking us off here tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your attending, and have a good evening.